It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first trip to Sweden, so I'm really excited to be speaking to you all on this topic, which is not just very close to my heart, because I'm the Minister for Equalities, among other things, in the UK. It is also my job. And being Minister for Equalities means I'm at the forefront of many of the contentious issues which we see happening in this space. And actually, a lot of what I'm seeing touches on what both Fraser and Merin have been talking about. But I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about what's going wrong and how bad everything is. And I do think a lot is going wrong. I do think things are bad. But I also wanted to speak about how we can fix it and how we can try to turn the tide. So the first thing to ask ourselves is, why is this happening? I had an epiphany after speaking at a conference in the summer of 2018. And I was on a panel with a lady called Kimberly Crenshaw. I'd never heard of her, but apparently she's the queen of intersectionality. And we were talking about whether or not we were on our way to achieving a post-racial world. And the answer seemed obvious to me. I, a black female immigrant, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I moved to the UK from Nigeria, was a member of parliament. Of course, we were well on our way if we hadn't already achieved this. And I was met with hostility. It was an audience like this one. And there was a group of young white girls who were sort of hissing and tut-tutting in the audience, shocked by what I was saying, believing that the UK was a great country that really had achieved equality for people irrespective of their background. And I was intrigued because I was the black person talking about my experience, and these people were getting very angry. So at the end of the session, I went over to them. I actually overheard them being very rude about me. So I went over to them. They were caught by surprise, but we had a long conversation. And it was the first time that I came into contact with those young people who are at the front line of identity politics we see today. And they were just baffled that I wasn't angry about racism. Couldn't I see their white privilege? And in speaking to them, it was clear that they'd never actually spoken at length to anyone who disagreed with them, but they were also confused by the end of the conversation. I knew I'd had an impact because I could see them questioning some of their own assumptions and begin to argue amongst themselves. But in the course of the conversation, I asked them, why do you hold these strong views when you clearly haven't spent that much time thinking about what it means? And one of the girls looked at me and she said, because I really need to feel like I'm a part of something important. And that's at the heart of it. It's an emotional void that they are trying to fill, whether it's because of the absence of religion or because they see so much of the wins we've had when we talked about the civil rights movement in the 60s, and so many great things have been achieved. And there's actually not that much left for young people of today. So they are creating a space where they can do those things again in a smaller and smaller arena. So they see themselves as crusaders in a religious movement that's providing them with meaning, it's providing them with security, and they are warriors for social justice warriors. And I look at this phenomenon and I call it authoritarian progressivism. And I don't like calling it woke because I think the term woke, we use it, it's very pithy, it's short, it's easy, and we all think we know what we're talking about. But the term does two things. The first thing is it mocks this sentiment, which is actually quite positive, and it fails to understand what's driving people to think like this. But the other reason why I don't like it is because they call it being alert to social justice, but it masks the destructiveness of this ideology, and we just think of it as being something trivial, which is alluding to the point that Fraser had made. So I like to call it authoritarian progressivism. Conservatives and liberals are here. The authoritarian progressives are there. And the one thing you mustn't do is be confused and think that these people might have something in common with you. They are the new authoritarians. And as Equalities Minister, I see firsthand just how they are undermining so many liberal tenets. So, and the biggest thing I see is in the increased politicization of the workplace and a proliferation of workplace political activism that's masquerading as social justice, which is also related to some of the points that Merin was making. So it's very similar to trade unionism. But it's different because it has a coercive element to it. It's about controlling the thoughts and behaviors of their co-workers and their customers, what their customers like, what their co-workers are reading. It's not about improving their economic, it's not about improving the economic lot of the worker collective. It's also based on subjective morality, again, that's akin to religion. So instead of asking for better pay or better conditions, they take part in sort of religious days of observance. It's, it's International Women's Day, it's Pride Month, it's Transgender Day of Remembrance, it's International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transgender, and there's so many things, Mental Health Awareness Week. They are observing a religious calendar of things that need to be done. They are not actually focused on the core purpose of what the organization is, whether it's public or private sector. It's often what they're doing is completely disconnected from the core purpose of the organization. It is not about improving their livelihoods. It's all about the self-actualization, the top of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is how this movement I see is coming into place. This is where it's coming from. But what are we getting wrong? Because I don't see us, and by us I mean the conservative, liberal, I see myself as a classical liberal, that movement of people. We are really failing to tackle this. And if we're to fix it, we need to understand what we've been doing wrong. And I think that too many of our cohort, too many of my colleagues and contemporaries across the political spectrum really fail to realize that it's not 1995 anymore. It's not even 2005 anymore. We are living in the postmodern era. We live in the age of entitlement. We live in the age of identity politics. And polarization is a natural consequence of that. Too often, people see things like Brexit or voting of Trump as what's causing the polarization. Polarization is here. And that is those things that people are getting quite exercised about are actually symptoms, not the cause. And you cannot deal with it with managerialism. You can't do that in an age where everybody has their own facts now, and they get their legal advice from Twitter or, worse, from political campaigns that masquerade as charities. So we need to recognize that things have changed. The second thing we do is we need to assert, we need to stop, the second thing we do wrong is we assert instead of explain, which is why we will win elections, but we're not winning any arguments. And I think center-right political thought in particular has been on a downward trajectory, because the big thing we were fighting in the 80s, during the Cold War, it was not an abstract concept. And so you knew what happened when there was a society that had no free thought, that didn't tolerate difference, that didn't support the rule of law. And because there hasn't been the big bad that we could put ourselves against, we are not making arguments anymore. We will talk about deregulation, for example, and assume that everybody knows that we're talking about cutting red tape. But now, when people hear that, what they hear is, you're taking away my safety net, and you're not looking after people's interests. They hear us talking about liberty, and they don't see liberty. What they see is the freedom to exploit and the freedom to take advantage of others, because we are not making the argument. And we need to rediscover that lost art of political argument. We also don't nail down the language. We're often speaking at cross purposes, and we don't force those of our intellectual opponents to say what they really mean. So if I give an example of a parliamentary select committee that I was at a couple of months ago, and I was asked a very contentious and controversial question by the committee chairman, and her aim wasn't to shed light on government policy, which is what the committee is supposed to do. She wanted to make me look like I was somebody who was anti-trans. So she asked this question, and I looked at her and I said, "What do you mean by trans?" And she couldn't answer the question, even though she was asking me this. She didn't know. And then she said, "That's unfair." And so everyone laughed. This is a committee chairman. This is a Conservative MP. So this is someone in my own party. So this isn't about me versus other people who are across the ideological spectrum. This is everywhere. It's in every party. It's in every organization. So I explained to her what I thought that it meant, and by doing so and forcing her to say what she meant and explaining what I meant, it exposed the absurdity of the position. And that, I realize, is what happened when I was speaking to those young people 4 years before. You need to force people to say exactly what they mean. We also spend a lot of time trying to please an activist class that is not interested in compromise and that is not interested in acknowledging that actually so much good has happened. They want a revolution. So you coming with, small incremental, well, we'll try this and we'll do this nice thing. That's not what they want. They want a revolution. And you see it most starkly when they talk about the Conservative government. And you will hear, you would have heard arguments previously about fighting racism. We need more representation. You want to see more ethnic minorities, in positions of power. We have the most ethnically diverse cabinet in the history, not just of the UK, I suspect, in the world. The Chancellor, the Home Secretary, the two great officers of state, both Asians. The Business Secretary is of Ghanaian heritage. The Education Secretary is an Iraqi immigrant. We have the Attorney General, the most highly paid member of the cabinet. She is an Indian Goan. The head of our COP26, and that's just within the cabinet, let alone the Health Secretary as well. So we've also taken all the best stuff as well, which is it's a testament to how we do meritocracy within the Conservative Party. We are the most ethnically diverse cabinet, and I'm not even talking about people at my level, the middle-ranking ministers. And yet, we are still accused of being extremely racist because the goalpost has moved. It is no longer about representation. We, the ethnic minorities in the government, are really handmaidens to white supremacy. So this is what happens when you make the concession without making the argument. The goalpost moves, and you just end up your concession actually being used as an example of part of the problem. So this just shows how racist the government is, that he even gets black people to come and help them be racist as well. This is what happens when you try to please an activist class that is not willing to be pleased. And another mistake is accepting the presentations of problems as requiring the states to get involved. Because one of the temptations that politicians have to try and fix everything. And so the state is getting bigger and intruding into more and more aspects of our lives. And this is not what liberty is about. It's a huge challenge for us because the activist class are making everything political. It makes a mockery of the rule of law as it's politicizing everything. And why this is critical for liberty is because these new authoritarians have no fundamental concept of the meaning of liberty beyond it being the freedom to do bad things, to be offensive or to be exploitative. And this is why us defining our core concepts is really important. Liberty is a practical necessity. It's not just a philosophical nice to have. And the more state power grows, the more we curtail what people can and should do and think for themselves, we reduce their ability to actually do the thinking. People have stopped thinking now, and we forget what the state's purpose is. We're no longer asking, what should the state do? What should it not do? Instead, we're telling it to do all sorts of things and get involved in places that it shouldn't do, when really the state should be there as the protector against the authoritarianism or the arbitrariness. It becomes the enforcer. And the way it does so is by having people who are in this activist position, taking up roles in loads of independent organizations which no longer become independent. So much of what we call it woke thinking, it's really evolved out of the progressive thinking around power structures. It wants to replace the old oppressed working class with new oppressed classes based on sex, on sexuality, on race, and they are all being oppressed by men or by white people or by heterosexuals. And when they see this, they believe that the oppression must be met with aggression. And if you're tolerating the oppression by white people, by heterosexuals, etc., you are endorsing this oppression. And it doesn't matter if you're not doing anything. Your silence is violence, and it's part of the problem. So you will get people talking about anti-racism, and many people very foolishly just think this means not liking racism. It isn't. It means you must join the activism. You must be a part of doing things, even if you don't think they're right or you don't think they're going to work. You must be active or you are part of the problem. So they see the liberty to do nothing as being intolerant in itself. So our views of what is tolerance have now become intolerant. And I reject this. I believe that liberty is the right of all individuals to choose to do whatever they want to do, irrespective of whether we like them or not. And it is the most fundamental right, without which almost all the other rights are really not worth having. And there's no point, in particularly those on the center-right, thinking that, be laissez-faire and just let things happen. If we don't take part and try and fight this and enforce what I call muscular liberalism, and this is how I think we can resolve it. If we don't enforce a muscular liberalism, we will lose everything, and we need to revive that. So how do we do it? So with a constructive, positive alternative, if you have to win, if you want to win, you have to have something that you're asking people to move on to. And I think that that is the muscular liberalism I've just referred to. And we also need to make the case for small government, but we must stop doing it in isolation, because when small government is not an end in itself, it's just a better way of doing things. If the government is doing everything, it's doing everything badly rather than a few things well, which I think is one of the problems that we have in the UK today. And we also need to look at first principles of what the liberal framework provides. So, for instance, the assumption that every white person is guilty of racism, whether you like it or not, which is what a lot of these books, like the one written by Robin DiAngelo, put forward, that's against the presumption of innocence. It also implies inherited racial guilt. These are things that are completely opposed to the liberalism that we knew not just that long ago. And finally, we need to look at how to strengthen institutions. And the way we do that is by getting people who care about the institutions and believe in it, even if they're flawed, to help to renew and rebuild. There's no point getting activists who hated these institutions to come in and try and revolutionize them. They will destroy them. But the most critical thing is to understand what you will lose. If you believe that making these concessions is fine, and yes, colonialism was a terrible thing, and let's just expunge things from the history books, and let's just accept that the West was exploitative, you lose something even more fundamental. Because if you believe that the West is wealthy and successful because of exploitation, it means that the rule of law is nothing. It means that free markets don't mean anything. It means that democracy and all of the things which we've put forward as how to build a successful society are all lies. And that is the most dangerous thing. That is what we are giving up if we allow those new authoritarians to succeed.